And we're live, guys. Welcome to Staking Mondays. My name is Mirko, and I'm the co-founder of Staking Rewards. And I'm delighted to have today's guest, Greg Osuri, founder and CEO of Akash Network. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Mirko. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on. So Akash Network is the world's first decentralized and open source cloud. And today we'll talk a little bit about how Akash is positioned to take on the cloud computing market. We'll talk about how stakers and node providers can participate and benefit from Akash. We'll talk about why Akash has one of the highest staking rates in the industry. And we'll talk a little bit about decentralized cloud computing versus cloud storage, and also about the roadmap for Akash, and many, many more things. And not only that, today is also a very, very special episode for Staking Mondays. We're doing one of the biggest giveaways in the history of the show with a total pot of $5,000 worth of AKT. So we'll have 5 winners who each get 1,000 worth of AKT. So stay tuned, stay with us, guys. Everything you have to do is follow Staking Rewards and Akash Network on Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Staking Rewards and Akash on YouTube, and then drop in some great high quality questions in the chat here. I've already seen there like quite a lot of great questions. Keep them coming, guys. Much appreciated, and we'll address them in the end of the show. And before we jump into it, let's do a quick shout out to our sponsors, Lido. Lido is the market leading liquid staking solution, and with Lido you can stake Ethereum, Solana, and Terra while keeping full liquidity via staking derivatives. So these staking derivatives you can use in multiple DeFi applications to generate additional yield. And if you want to keep flexibility with your stake tokens, head over to lido.fi. That's Lido Finance, super exciting project. And that having said, thanks a lot to Lido. And today we have Greg from Akash. Let's start with a lightning round of questions here. Just a very short answer from you for each of these questions, Greg. I'm very, very keen to have your answers. What was your first crypto investment outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum?
Oh, my investment, huh? It's not a Bitcoin, Ethereum.
Or maybe like the first project that kind of really spiked your interest outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum.
I think it would be Atom, if I remember correctly. 2016, 2017, can't remember, 2017. I think it's when Atom released the hub. I think Atom. Yeah.
All right, cool.
I can't remember anything else that I bought from a token perspective, because Ethereum, Bitcoin was obvious. Ethereum was obvious because we needed gas money for deploying the first version of Akash. And I also bought some Ethereum for my niece back then, 2017. Immediately, and after that was just Atom, because I really wanted to play around with the staking and the cool stuff it gives. Yeah.
Sense. And so what was like which person inspired you the most during your crypto journey?
Oh boy, who inspired me the most, huh? I don't think it's one person per se. I can point to most. Let's see. I was a big fan of Hal Fenley, and I was a big fan of Nick Szabo as well. Vitalik certainly has quite a bit of impression. Jack Kwan, if you remember, was very, very impressive. The founder of Cosmos, I looked up to him. I would say Stefan Thomas, the former CTO of Ripple, he's a good friend of mine. He was he took me in, and he helped me quite a bit understand the space. Anatoly from Solana. Anatoly and I met 2018. He was just brilliant. I introduced Anatoly on stage for the first time in 2008, and his design on Solana, and I think a lot of his work further solidified my faith in proof of stake. I wouldn't call one person, just a lot of people. That's what makes crypto special.
Yeah, definitely. And you named some very inspiring personalities there. Speaking about like Akash, what's the most inspiring decentralized cloud project outside of Akash for you?
Cloud, I would say Saya, Skynet, Arweave, I like. Saya per se, because they've been around for a long time, and the phenomenal user experience focus is very, very amazing. And if you look at cloud, Akash is one of many players, right? Akash is not the player, unlike what we see with Amazon. And that's the beauty of the decentralized cloud ecosystem, because we all understand that a single player cannot solve all the problems, and shouldn't solve all the problems, but rather focus on what they're really good at. So someone should focus what they're really good at, like Saya focusing on storage, Arweave focusing on long-term storage, Saya focusing on more real-time storage, uh, and Akash focusing on compute. Handshake, I really like Handshake a lot. I think it has so much power to change the way we discover new services. I mean, it's so decentralized, so it's kind of like leaderless, and it's hard to see the impact it'll have without that. In today's world, where leaders are kind of having this cult-like following, right? But I love Handshake. I think there are a lot of really cool projects that are upcoming in the decentralized cloud ecosystem, um, that are going to win because of the interoperability they're going to figure out. I think Cosmos in general laid down the foundation for interoperability. I'm seeing incredible projects, mainly from Web 2 folks coming into Web 3 and bringing some of those like high performance application ideas into Web 3. And they're all building on Cosmos. So I'm incredibly excited on the cloud on Cosmos per se.
Awesome. Yeah, well said. There are a lot of great projects too. And so how do you stay up to date with crypto news in the markets? Do you have a favorite news show, podcast, or whatever?
Yeah, I have a website called twitter.com. It's phenomenal.
Awesome. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. When did you check your crypto portfolio the last time?
This morning, like everyone else, I suppose.
Probably, yeah.
Shouldn't have checked this morning, but in times of turmoil, I feel like you tend to check more than normal. I'm a human too.
Yeah, better make sure you're not over leveraged in markets like these.
I don't touch leverage. I don't actually. I'm not very active. I buy something and I just sit on it. I don't. I stake and restake, and of course, I do things that are participatory. I try to automate for most of it, most of my staking. But for me, if I buy something, I don't touch it for at least 5 years. There's no point. I think crypto in general is so young. And I tend to only touch products that I use, right? Like DVPN. That's another incredible cloud project I would point out, because they have a functioning product, and I use it very much. Um, like DVPN, Akash, I use Akash every day. Like, deploy my blogs, deploy a lot of cool stuff I build. I just buy stuff and keep it. I think these things need at least 5 to 6 years by the time they can see real adoption, real growth. And these are very young products.
Yeah,
in the market. Yeah.
fully agreed. Also, there's more time for you to focus on building Akash, I guess. And so, like, which destination are you planning to travel to next?
Dubai. I think I have Dubai in the books. Could be ETH Denver as well. That's in the books. Dubai for sure. I'm actually starting to like Dubai quite a bit for crypto.
Awesome. And now that we're just 10 days into the new year, 2022, what's your New Year's resolution?
I don't do resolutions, I I'm a very big believer in continuous improvement, small improvements every day. But one of the few things that I wanted to get better is being more available to people. I think traditionally I've been a lot more um, distant in the sense that there's just so much work to do and so many people to respond to. So I'd rather be quick and easy to get to, working on that. And I want to actually go back to coding more. And I see my friends, Anatoly from Solana, or you know, or Sunny from Osmosis. I really love that they still code, and I don't code as much as I used to. Um, in the beginning of Akash, actually 5 years ago, I wrote the entire system myself, about 60,000 lines of code in about 6 months, I think. Um, and I really miss doing that. So I want to be able to go back to coding, and I tend to get a lot more ideas when I actually code. And they don't let me write production code, but at least I can do prototypes and whatnot. So more coding and more responsive.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope you find some time for that. I mean, you must be super busy. Probably you have a large team at Akash now as well, and probably your main objective is also to especially empower others to code rather than do it yourself, I guess. But
That's the battle, right? How do you
yeah.
like coding is very personal. I enjoy doing it. It's one of those privileges I would call, right? Not everybody gets to code. Um, like I love the fact that Anatoly is you see him in the airport, he's coding. You know what I mean? Like, uh, I guess just try to like use those opportunities where, you know, like for some reason I got trained to using a workstation rather than a laptop, right? Going back to a laptop, so it's more like permissive no matter where I am to code. Getting used to using a small screen instead of big screen so I can code anywhere. I think there are a lot of small changes you can do in life that lets you use your time more optimally. Like sitting in an airport, I can code. To sitting on an airplane, I should be able to code if I optimize my life to use a laptop. But I've been like so much used to using Vim. Vim is this editor, so I end up like opening like 8, 9 panes on this large screen. So bad habits. So I'd rather now I'm trying to use like a editor like Visual Studio or something where you have like one screen and you can actually navigate through multiple pages. Anyway, technicalities on like workstation versus laptops. More laptops this year.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Gotta find your way there, and I hope you will find more time to code. Really, it is like very fun, I believe. So, yeah. Anyway, let's jump into like some more long form questions here. And like right now, it's very exciting. We have 130 people watching live. That's amazing. Keep the questions coming. We have a giveaway going with like $5,000 worth of AKT. Where we have 5 winners at the end of the show. So make sure to follow Staking Wars and Akash on Twitter and YouTube, and keep them coming, the high quality questions in the chat here. Great, guys. So let's jump right into it, and maybe go back a little bit. Like, why did you start building Akash, and what problem are you solving with Akash? And kind of let me play like the devil's advocate, and like, isn't the world doing fine running stuff on AWS and Google Cloud?
Good question. So really, the genesis goes back to, I would say, like 2013 when the idea for Akash came about. Little background: I've been building cloud since 2008. I designed Kaiser Permanente's first cloud infrastructure before cloud was a thing. I introduced AWS into Kaiser in 2008 when nobody heard of AWS. I love the AWS API only model that they introduced. AWS, when they came about, they had a very amazing developer first sort of like ethos. API only, command line only, and all the good stuff. That's what attracted me. Um, you got to remember Web 2, when they began, they had really good intentions, right? This is the birth of Web 2. Open APIs, all talking to each other, open web and all the good stuff. But somewhere down the line, the suits came in and it got greedy, and they changed their ethos, and it became this behemoth of greed surrounded by competitive modes, and they lost the touch they had with developers. And we started seeing that quite a bit in 2011, 2012. In 2013, it got to a point where, as a developer, I founded Angel Hack. Angel Hack is the largest hackathon accelerator in the world. We had 150,000 developers in the ecosystem in about 50 cities. I helped launch companies like Firebase. Firebase became Google Cloud's database. So I've been with developers and interacting with developers for a long time. And a choice people had to make in 2013 was, well, if you want to build something fast, you can use something like Heroku and deploy your application. Really good user experience. But the moment you want to scale that, you have to use Amazon, and that's a big deal. Because switching from Heroku to Amazon means, well, especially if you want to do it in a reliable, automated way, where your infrastructure is codified, it's impossible. So I started working on this project called Terraform. Terraform is created by HashiCorp. I was the early contributor to Terraform. Vault, Kubernetes came around 2014, Docker around the same time. So I was in this quest of developing a system that's easy to use as well as easy to scale. So the choice was well, if it's easy to use, hard to scale; hard to use, easy to scale. So easy to hard to scale, easy to use, right? So there's really no platform that was easy to use and easy to scale, and also the pricing increasingly got very, very inefficient, right, over time, and we're seeing that quite a bit right now. Cloud is the biggest cost component, and the reason for that was the pricing was so different and so sneaky of what Amazon does. They add up all these small things in a very opaque way, and by the time you see your bill, it's humongous. You don't even know what to spend your money on, right? So there was this opacity in pricing. There is no way to predict your costs. It's very, very hard to use and scale. And so once you had that on one hand, the other hand, you have this enormous compute. So I developed high scale systems. One of the systems that I helped design was a system in demand base where we had about 1 billion transactions per day. And these systems generally, you can't really use cloud for super high performance systems because in order to achieve performance, you either need to reduce latency. That means the amount of time it takes from the device that requests the workload to the server that responds to the workload. And really high performance applications, the latency is 100 milliseconds. 100 milliseconds we call the cognitive limit, right? So it takes about 100 milliseconds. If it's over 100 milliseconds, your brain can actually process that as lag, right? So if any interaction takes less than 100 milliseconds, it seems more smoothly. So if you want to build really high performance applications, you have to respond within 100 milliseconds, both network as well as application latency. So in order to do that, you need to go close to the user in terms of network proximity, right? So say, for example, if your user is in San Francisco, you should have a server in San Francisco that responds within 10 milliseconds. So 90 milliseconds you have here for your application. Similarly, if you have users in New York, you should have a server in New York, they'll respond. Now, the challenge is how do you make sure the New York server and the San Francisco server have the same data set and have a consistency when it comes to data, right? So all these architectures, when you start really getting into how do you deploy high scale applications, you can't really do that in the traditional cloud. So you end up using a lot of data centers, right? So that's why Dropboxes and all these use their own data centers because they want, or Google's or Facebook's. So cloud is sort of this transitionary thing that'll get you to somewhere. Once you get somewhere, you start scaling. And our idea was why don't we choose scalability first, performance first, instead of having this transitionary thing. So that's when the idea for edge computing came about, and we were not actually doing crypto at that time. This is in 2014. We developed technology that would enable any data center around the world to effectively become their own cloud provider. And the challenge was to keep the data in sync or consistent. That's when we started researching, and we developed something like a system that looks something like a BitTorrent style replication with a Merkle tree style integrity checks. So you put BitTorrent and Merkle tree under the blockchain. So so it was blockchain came in 2000, I would say 2016 timeframe. Really liked the idea. We were trying out a few things. We tried Ethereum first to not build our own blockchain, because it's a pain in the ass. So we tried to use something like Ethereum, and Ethereum crashed. And when CryptoKitties came about, 40,000 users, and then we discovered Cosmos. The paper behind Cosmos, it was very fascinating. Cosmos was was a Go language package that we can actually implement in our own sort of like is it stop now? That we can actually implement and build our own blockchain. So that was very fascinating for us. So long story short, yes, it began in 2013. We formalized the company in 2015. We launched and researched Akash in 2017.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it seems like the primary reasons are like intransparent pricing, for example, and like the lack of scalability of cloud infrastructure, right?
So, on top of that, actually, to expand a little more on that, so the cloud today, the Web 1.0 made servers a thing, data centers a thing, right? In order to serve an application, you need to have your own data center or lease one. Web 2.0 created the cloud infrastructure where, because it's hard to lease a data center, there are these companies called cloud infrastructure companies that give you the ability to do so in a simple way. And in doing so, they transformed into rent seekers, essentially people, that, abstract the value in a way that's extractive more than the other way around, right? So and increasingly they started creating this closed competitive mode. So databases, for example, once they move to the cloud, once they have you use it, they know that you're used to this like comfort, and then they will offer you products that are anti to open source, right? So, and more often than not, a lot of times they actually take open source products and white label them and sell them as their own. Like Amazon, has about 300 services. Most of the services are not built by Amazon; they're just open source software offered to you at a premium for manageability. And some of them, they're actually against the companies that built them. Elastic Cache, for example. Elastic Cache is a caching software that Amazon offers, built by Elastic, the company. And Elastic's business model was to offer a hosting solution, but Amazon took their business model. Elastic was pissed off, and they sued them in court. And New York Times wrote this amazing op-ed in 2019, end of 2019, December. Highly recommend you check it out. The anti-competitive practices of Amazon as to how they steal open source software and make it their own. So they've gotten increasingly hostile towards open source software. Mm-hmm. So it's very important. Well, pricing is one thing, developer focus is another thing, but stifling innovation for open source software, which is bread and butter, all of us, kind of rely on, is very dangerous, right? So increasingly, the world was getting more closed and closed, and we felt a need to create an open market. And we saw an opportunity really with when we were deploying the software to our end users in data centers. We noticed most compute in data centers, around 85% or so, compute in data centers is not used. So that's when the idea for a marketplace came about, essentially creating a developer-first open cloud marketplace where anyone that needs capacity can get this capacity from folks that have capacity. So essentially, if you add another layer of deployability and composability on top of that, you can create a cloud that looks and feels like Amazon Web Services. Now, right now, Akash is similar to Amazon Fargate. Fargate is one of the services Amazon has. It's a container runtime service. But the vision of Akash is to enable a services marketplace where you will have those 300 or so services, but in a decentralized way. And we are building up to that.
Cool. That's very exciting, and I definitely feel that. I mean, this is what Amazon is doing on like the general like store and like in their shop as well. To many people who want to sell stuff on Amazon, that just copy their ideas and their products and then sell them under their own brand. And this is definitely hindering innovation. So I think it's very important that we have solutions like Akash that are permissionless and allow any kind of technology to thrive by its own in a free market. And so speaking of that, like how complex is it for someone to build on Akash today, and how reliable is it?
Very reliable. I mean, I've been running. It's so reliable that it's ridiculous how funny. I mean, how it runs. And I have like my website Akash.network, all these running on Akash itself, and we have monitoring external, right? And there are times when we have extra loads. And extra loads means extra memory. Sometimes that may crash the application, and the application crashes. It comes back up instantly. It's beautiful when you see that fault tolerance in work. We had, I think it was Juno Network that was initially running the test nets on Akash. I think Jacob tried to do a DDoS on him, uh, and the thing recovered instantly. This is very reliable, way more reliable than the cloud by default, right? Because it has fault tolerance by default. On cloud, you have to enable that and you have to configure that. But Akash comes with default fault tolerance. So by default, it's highly reliable. And Akash launched in March last year, about 9 months, and hasn't gone down a single time. In this period, Amazon went down about 50 times, right? So
Cool.
I'm sure we're a young network, sure we're early, but just in comparison as to how many times things went down in reliability, Akash is very reliable. Is it easy to use? Um, yes and no. If you use something like Akash Analytics or several, Space Potato has a UI, uh, it's relatively easy. But if you are to use a command line, it's relatively difficult. Akash is optimized for composability and not necessarily usability. And the reason for that is in order to optimize usability, you need to what do you call customize the user experience to the application you're developing. So we have built Akash Network to be composable, so builders can build usability on top of the composability we provide. Is that changing? Yes, absolutely. Is that going to get better? The core tooling from ease of use? Absolutely. But one thing you got to remember is the power behind Akash. To do high scale, difficult things, Akash is super simple compared to Amazon, right? Say you want to have 10 servers in 10 in each part of the world, all synced up to a central cluster of servers. The way you compose an infrastructure on SDL is very, very smooth compared to something like CloudFormation, right? Which is Amazon's language. It's just a modern composability language. But if you were to put a WordPress website, or if you were to put a React website, it's not that easy compared to something like Netlify or Vercel, which again is an Amazon reseller. All these are built on top of Amazon's, right? So we don't have the ecosystem yet that makes it super simple, hyper customized for certain use cases, but that's being slowly built. Like if you there's a package called Omnibus that makes it super simple for you to launch a testnet or a mainnet or a mainnet node or Cosmos chains. There is an application called Starport that lets you scaffold a application from scratch, a Cosmos SDK based application from scratch. But soon enough, you're going to see a scaffold deploy testnet. So easy to deploy in Akash, right? So the ease of use comes through these integrations that are to products that are hyper specialized in achieving X, right? But it's nearly very, very hard to build a generic platform that's super easy to use. And that's why tools like Vim and really advanced tools are not so easy to use, right? So the way I measure success is through a metric called cognitive coefficiency, Cognitive coefficiency goes by the value perceived divided by cognitive load. If the ratio is greater than 1, it's a successful product. If it's less than 0, it's not. So far, Akash hosts about 550 applications, live applications. Obviously, these 550 users or deployers of these 550 applications felt that the cognitive, the value perceived coming from Akash is much greater than the cognitive load they need to incur, and so so they find it easy to use. So it's a little more complex on the simplicity subject.
Cool. And I think that leads us right into our next question. Is like, what does it take for Akash to win market share from AWS and Google Cloud, like significantly? What needs to happen? Is it like the ease of use? Like, does it need to become better, or like is it just like adoption, or like where do you think are what are the things that you are working on as well to really gain significant market share?
So first, we need to have capabilities match. So Akash has just one service, which is container hosting. Amazon has about 300 plus services. Google similarly has 300 plus services, right? Google's and Amazon's and the big clouds can host a container or a VM. Along with that, provide you managed services for databases, for caches, or load balancers, all these services that, as a developer, even though you can deploy on Akash, you don't want to deploy on Akash or deploy or manage it yourself. They're just, not worth your time, right? And you rather have a professional do it because they know how to do it, right? So the value of Amazon or Google comes from these managed services that you can use and pay an extra premium. And I would say like 90% of the revenue these companies make come from these managed services. Akash doesn't have managed services. I think the basic thing we'll need is to just capability match with Amazon's and Google's. And the managed services is not it's not easy to do. I mean, it's easier in a centralized way, but consider doing that in a decentralized way, right? Say you want, and the way it would work is, well, say you have an application, say you have a MongoDB cluster and a Node.js application and a React frontend, right? So ideally, you want to be like, hey, Akash, deploy my React frontend to a CDN across 10 to 15 regions, optimize the routing to match the closest CDN server to my user, so their downloads is extremely fast. Have an RPC or API layers that serve these endpoints at the edge, maybe 10 of them, and then have a MongoDB cluster maybe in the center, and have the MongoDB cluster managed by MongoDB, the company, and the Node servers manage the actual runtimes optimized by Node source, someone that's good at Node, and the CDNs let them be optimized by a CDN company, right? So that's the future we want to build, right? And the entire experience has to be smooth and seamless, right? And I think that's how we win. We win by getting all these incredible services composed in a way that's super simple for developer to adopt, and we're getting there, right? It's not going to be a short few months process. We can't be just yelling, "Oh, we're better than Amazon." We will be better than Amazon as long as we keep building in the ethos that it's it's an open marketplace for anyone to participate, and as long as we focus on the user, the developer, and focus on their particular use case. Now, what I just described. Imagine you as taking rewards having that capability within a click, right? I mean, it's a win for you. And for right now, I imagine you have to use something like Terraform or something like I don't know, CloudFormation, which is much simpler version and nastier version of Terraform to do all these things and manage them on your behalf, right? So yes, capabilities match. And then once you take all these capabilities and put them in a highly composable system like SDL, I think that's going to be a powerful killer combination. And one thing Akash has that the Amazons and Googles don't have is permissionlessness. And it's very powerful for composability, right? Because using permissionless systems, you can build abstractions on top of each other that do not, where the developers don't need the permission of the underlying system, and still be able to innovate at a global scale with zero restrictions. And it's very, very powerful primitive Akash has. And a lot of our growth has been, even though we are a subpar product, I mean, in all honesty, we don't have the capabilities that Amazon has. Even with that, the level we are seeing, the incredible adoption we have is because of this core nature, and that's why we will win. It's going to take time. It's not going to, Rome's not built in a day, but it will take time. But I'm very confident as long as we keep doing what we're doing by focusing on the developer, keeping our ethos open, we will win.
So do you think like these managed services from AWS and Google Cloud, like how would you compete with that? Like, is it like, because it's a decentralized project, is like someone gonna step up and like create or like offer these services? Like when I think about staking modes, like it would definitely be one of the considerations for us, I think, to move from like a Google Cloud to an Akash, to have like the ease of use and like the managed services as well, because it's not the main part of our business, like to run like these infrastructure. If we can outsource this, and if there's like professional managed services that we can fully rely on.
Oh yeah, that's the vision of Akash. Always been. We're getting there, and the way we get there is, so today, let's say Elastic. So you have caching, right? You have to need an Elastic cache server. You can actually go, or like MySQL or Percona, right? So if you go to Akash, you got to deploy the server yourself. On Amazon, you basically get the Amazon, the DB service, and the database is managed by Amazon. So instead of doing that, what if the database is managed by Percona or someone who actually created MySQL, the company that creates MySQL? Who do you think is going to be better equipped at managing MySQL, Amazon or the company that created MySQL? The company that created MySQL, because they maintain the patch. Right now, they have no way, or whatever way they're offering their managed services is competing with Amazon, and they hate it. I mean, it's anti to their entire ethos, because a closed company controlling their business flow, and versus them being able to do that. So first thing is, we will create a marketplace where anybody can participate in providing you the managed database. And by the way, the managed database will be running in the same cluster as your application server, so your latency is minimum, right? So there will be tooling for a managed services company to be able to deploy in the same cluster and have all the tooling to debug and update and all the stuff they need to do. But the procurement will be in an open way where anybody can participate, and there will be a reputation system that we're working on that lets you choose which is the best provider, maybe tied to their GitHub and the social reputation system, so you can validate that this is the same person who created it. In instances where the creators don't want to manage, we'll have some sort of a royalty mechanism where, say, I don't know, the creator of Redis, right? Salvador, his name is. I love Redis. But he's an engineer. He doesn't want to like offer you managed services. But there are companies like Redis Labs that can offer you managed services, right? So figure out a way to incentivize a creator, the open source creator, while outsourcing the operation to a different company. So we have an entire design where it lets these companies that are struggling right now, the open source companies, struggling right now to make money, to offer their services on Akash in a low latency manner, or whatever latency manner that you want to design, right? Whatever proximity you want to design. And we started laying out, and a lot of my friends, Brian Fox, for example, who's a big Akash holder, Brian Fox created the Bash shell. If you remember Bash, everybody uses Bash, right? He was the first employee of the Free Software Foundation. They love this idea of an open cloud for open source software, right? And he's helping me design the system. There are a lot of amazing people that are involved right now in helping us design this system, an open marketplace system. We're hoping to see something by end of 2022. So 2023, I think, is going to be, if we have a functioning system like this, it's a game changer. It changes everything, right? Like but that's what we're building towards. But we can't get there without perfecting the container runtime system first, because that is the foundation for any system to be built on top. So the Akash network, and there's also innovation when it comes to payments. So we're creating a global cloud token, right? Akash token that will feed into these backend services in a more stable manner. So there's a lot of amazing things happening. We're just touching the tip of the iceberg right now.
It's exciting, and I can't wait for it actually to deploy on Akash as well.
Me neither. Like, I love building all these services, but managing a database is a pain in the ass. Like, I don't want to do that, right? Like,
true, yeah. So let's jump a little bit into like the differences between decentralized cloud computing and decentralized cloud storage. Like, for example, Arweave and FileCoin. Like, are you planning to provide similar services as well, or like how will they work together, kind of to create like a fully holistic, truly decentralized infrastructure stack? And like you talked earlier about, okay, like real-time storage and long-term storage, and like how do you position Akash, and like how do like these computing and storage also like intertwine with each other?
Right. So Akash has storage, but the lifetime of the storage equals the lifetime of the lease. So whatever storage Akash provides, supports stateful workloads. That means you can store state on Akash, but the state goes away the moment you end the lease, right? So anything could end the lease. It could be a provider initiated, it could be a tenant initiated. So there's no guarantee your data is going to live forever, right, on Akash. And we don't plan on providing anything, any extra service like an object storage service, like you see with S3, that can store your data on a long term. That's just not in the Akash's model, right? But we have to work with others like FileCoin or Saya or Arweave. I would say Saya is a beautiful example, because a lot of our users, actually, I actually store my MySQL backups. So I have a MySQL website I'm running, MySQL backup on Saya. And when I boot my Akash application, I take the data from Saya, load it into Akash for the real-time block storage. And once I back it up again in real time back to Saya, right? So in case my application goes down for whatever reason, my data is still living in Saya, right? So I use Saya as my authoritative source, or Arweave. Arweave is just a little more expensive, but it provides a different use case. It gives you permanency. Saya, I need to keep paying to keep my data, but Arweave, I pay once and it lives forever, right? But it's a lot more expensive. So depending on your use case, you can use what kind of data storage solution that you want, and that's the beauty of an open market, right? And we don't foresee offering cloud storage like Saya and Arweave. We are using them very well, but I'd like to see a little simpler interoperable system, more automated system in the future. Right now, I have to hold Saya tokens and Akash tokens to use them, or Arweave tokens. But really nice to be like, hey, I want to store this full time, in like forever, and just pay invisibly using my Arweave tokens, right? I think that's the future we're going to build towards, not like Akash offering storage, cloud storage. That's not in our priorities, or that's not in our best interest.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so what will the world look like in which Akash will be extremely successful? And like what's your personal moon scenario for Akash? Like how does the world look like? Will everything like run on Akash, all software, all services in the world? And how would that world kind of look like for the end user as well? Is it going to change anything for the end user? Like the people who are actually like going to the website, consuming software and so on, like, do they have a different experience, or does it feel the same as what we have currently?
When Akash is at like a full success state, everybody in the world will use Akash and not know that you're using Akash. There are devices in our houses that we drive that help us every day in doing different things, all have a compute, right? Cars, for example, cars are increasingly getting powerful. They are, they're increasingly getting heavily computationalized, like GPUs in Teslas. Someone can make up to $800 mining crypto on Tesla, right? So why isn't your Tesla paying for itself? Why isn't your refrigerator paying for itself? Why isn't your gaming console that you have, which I believe is going to be taking a much bigger role with metaverse, right? There's a lot of GPUs lying around in your house. Why aren't they being put to use, right? So at a full state, Akash success state will look like all these uh, unused compute should be used by someone that needs it. And I think if we do so, the cost that we pay on the cloud will significantly come down when we unlock all this unused compute. So end state for Akash is not just taking over cloud, but I think redefining what cloud is, right? Looking at every possible underutilized resource and enabling utility on top of that. And yes, the first step is taking over cloud, and that's going to, come to, that's going to happen when we have capabilities match. But even that is very early. I think the next step will be like when Tesla has Akash installed in it. That would be my end state. That's when it's going to be like, and that's what you want open protocols to have anyway. Akash is open protocol, anyone can build upon. I think that is the single most important property that'll get us there.
That would be nice. Tesla cloud running on Akash.
Right? Like it's possible. Like when your Tesla is charging in the night, it's useless. It should offer those GPUs to a machine learning researcher, the other part of the world that can run a few models in the night, and your Tesla making money on it. I mean, it's like when it's parking, it's useless, right? Like,
yeah, no, that's exciting. I mean, it's probably parking like 90% of the time, or like even more. Why not just like make use of that?
Yeah.
Is it possible for phones as well? Do you see like plugging in phones? Because phones are probably just used like more than Teslas, like probably 50% of the time or something, or maybe a little bit less, but people use their phones often. But you could use that as well and plug it into something like Akash.
Yeah, we are coming up with a ARM first build very, very soon. It's on the roadmap. I think we haven't announced it, but I think like this quarter and next, we'll have an ARM and GPU build coming out. So you can put that on your phones, Akash. Like one-click install on your phones. I think Androids will come first. Love to see like GPUs are going to redefine Akash, because GPUs now all of a sudden will make phones and these devices a lot more attractive to run Akash, right? Right now, Akash is compute only, so having that on the phone is useless because you're running low latency websites and phones are not server grade infrastructure. But GPUs can be sliced and diced in weird ways, like so many ways, because just compute. So I think GPUs are going to be a big, big shift for Akash. The possibilities what Akash you can do with Akash on the phones, on the devices, on the cars even. I actually saw, it's funny enough, so Tesla, I mean, of course, it's great, but there are people like GM, people like Honda. I have friends that work. They're all actually looking at containers very seriously. Red Hat is doing amazing work in developing something called CarOS. And I predicted this like in 2015. I was talking to someone at Daimler in Germany on this idea. We were brainstorming that, hey, cars should just start using containers and Kubernetes to manage the internal workloads. I mean, cars have about 200 computers these days, right? And they were like, yeah, this is a fine idea. But I think people now have started realizing that that containers are great for devices. And Akash is a container native system. So from what we are seeing with Red Hat, and I don't know if there are any enterprise people that work with containers here listening, please reach out to me, especially if you work in the enterprise space. I would love to learn more, but we're seeing quite a bit of penetration in the mobility space with container native tech. I'd love to position Akash there, just to see, even though it's early, but I think it's possible right now from technology. And from a societal standpoint, it's more acceptable container native systems. But oh boy, I'm just super excited. Like what the next few years, what it'll bring to, what Akash will bring, because Akash is a device first. Being decentralized, being optimized to run anywhere. We are very well positioned to be device first, where the cloud completely skipped the device world, right? So another reason why we're going to win is because of that, like a device first approach, because there's a whole new generation of like machines that haven't touched the cloud.
Yeah. So do you think once Ethereum moves to the beacon chain proof of stake entirely, like all the Ethereum GPU miners will deploy on the, or like run the Akash provider software, or like,
Yes,
is that a possible scenario?
absolutely. With the GPUs coming, all the Ethereum miners can run Akash on them and repurpose their hardware, and that's a big bet we're making, actually. So we're very excited for GPUs.
Awesome. So
GPUs,
how does it look like for someone running like a provider node? Like how do they establish it, and like what are also the differences between running a validator and then running a cloud provider? And can you do that separately? Can you do it like only together? And like what's the profit model there? How profitable is it really to do that?
So theoretically, they're separate things. So validating Akash is validating the Akash blockchain, and and that's similar to running any Cosmos-SDK blockchain, right? Validators do not provide compute. Although some validators are starting to, but they're not required to provide compute. It's a lot simpler to run a validator node. A lot simpler than running a provider node, but it's a little complex. There are only 100 validators now on Akash. We see that number increase once in a while. And I think that number is bound to increase. It's community governance driven, right? So, you earn income through commissions from staking rewards or whatever rewards. Right now staking, soon we'll have take income. So we have staking rewards that validators earn a commission from, right? And right now the inflation being 30 odd %, I think the APR folks can earn by staking to validators is around 40-45%, right? Pretty decent. Whereas the real money comes from providers, right? So providers are actually providing compute to Akash Network. They're separate from validators, and they have to be separate because we don't want a conflict of interest. We don't want a system that's validated by providers that will act in the best interest of providers only and not the tenants. So it's very important for us to have separation of concern and decouple these important user groups, right? So providers provide compute for Akash, and in exchange they earn Akash tokens. And we are actually right now, it's a very straightforward model. You get paid for what you offer, but we are working on a more incentivized model where some of the lack of demand can be fulfilled by staking rewards, right? So it's a little complex to run a provider. Right now, you need to run a Kubernetes cluster. There's a guide on our documentation website, docs.akash network. You need to have a functioning Kubernetes cluster, and with every new capability, you need to be able to support the capability. So soon we'll have persistent storage. That means you need to support network storage. We'll have ASN marketplace. That means IP address marketplaces. Then you need to support ASNs, right? So because cloud is very complex, providers tend to be complex organizations, right? Anyone can become a provider. Of course, it's a decentralized network, but in order to be able to win all these, jobs, Akash has an open auction system where you win jobs. You need to provide capabilities, right? Storage, ASINs, and all these capabilities. So unless you have that, you won't be able to make money. So that's why you have bigger providers like Equinix, Orion, and several others that are professional, that know how to do these things, providing compute more than mom and pops. But we're seeing quite a bit of like mom and pops catching up, right? We have about 79 providers on Akash. Not too many people know this. but Equinix being the largest one takes a lot of dominance, right, in the ecosystem. So yes, it is a little complex than running a validator node.
Cool. Yeah, that's exciting, and it is possible for anyone to run a node. I think that's what it's about, and this will certainly become easier over time as well.
Yeah, well, we are working. We're doing a big overhaul on provider operations. There's a framework we'll be publishing very soon. There are toolings we're going to do, and there's another tool called Handy OS, which I highly recommend check it out. That literally makes a single box provider. I don't know how useful or useless it's going to be in terms of like giving you useful compute, but that's just an example of how simplified it can get to run a provider. It'll manage running the Kubernetes cluster, the whole shebang of it. But I think Akash is going to make Kubernetes much simpler to use, and we're working towards it.
Cool. So, talking about the validators and the Akash network itself, like what were your reasons and objectives to build on the Cosmos SDK? Like you talked about it earlier, that you it was also one of the first projects you were really interested in, and you tried it on Ethereum first, and so on. Yeah.
Good question. So we built on Ethereum, right? First, just a prototype, because when you're prototyping, you don't necessarily know what you're getting into. You want to be able to quickly deploy something and validate that deployment, right? And we really didn't want to build our own blockchain. We are big, believers in build only things that you need, because software is hard. And we're a cloud infrastructure, product, right? We are not a blockchain product per se. So we chose Ethereum first, and then Ethereum just was really bad. I mean, gas fees weren't that expensive back then, but the scalability just was really bad, right? And CryptoKitties launched and crashed Akash. And we were like, well, you can't really have an infrastructure platform that's promising sovereignty and stability run on Ethereum. Ethereum is great for proof of concept, right? But terrible to run production systems. Even and it's gotten worse. And then we were, the choice was like, oh, build your own blockchain. And we really didn't want to do that because, well, it's going to take a lot of money and a lot of time to build a blockchain. And then when we were desperate, we discovered Tendermint. So Tendermint was this library that was written in Go. I mean, we are a big Go shop, and I've been writing Go code since 2014. And it's not perfect back then, at least 2016, 2017, I think 2017 timeframe. It wasn't perfect. It was there. It kind of could work. But it's better than having nothing for us. So Tendermint provided this consensus engine but essentially the blockchain, the state machine for the blockchain that we can build upon. And since it was written in Go, we had this confidence that if anything goes wrong, we could actually, apply fixes and fix it ourselves. And I think we started like sending patches up to the upstream quite a bit during the time frame. And then we read the paper on IBC, and that really resonated with us, because composability between sovereign blockchains versus you can have composability on a shared state system. It's not that complicated. But having composability on a sovereign systems is the future that we envision. And that's how you scale systems. You scale system by decoupling, interest, right? As software engineer, like if you look at highly coupled systems, you know how dangerous they can be, and you know how limited in scalability they can be, right? It doesn't take a genius. So we were absolute believers in highly decoupled sovereign systems that can compose with each other. And we started looking at different composability models. I mean, Coil or Interledger, back then, Stefan Thomas' brainchild, that provided a very interesting model. It was much cleaner, much simpler than IBC, but it was too simple for us to use, and it wasn't complete. And then you have Cosmos-SDK, which essentially built upon the Tendermint engine, written in Go. And by the way, so when we started building on Tendermint, Tendermint is a modular system, so you can have like all these different features on a blockchain, like accounts, wallets, staking, all these different functionalities. Governance, for example, are modular, so you can drop in a module and you get the functionality. It's really simple, really cool for building L1s from scratch. So we were developing, since there was no Cosmos SDK back then, we started developing all these modules ourselves and started like and launched several testnets, very unstable testnets. They would all crash all the time because we wrote the code ourselves, and it was just too much to write for a small team. So, and again in 2019, I remember Adam had this massive tweet somewhere. He deleted like 150,000 lines of code. The code we've been writing for so long, and migrated to Cosmos SDK in like a few months, like a month or two. And because Cosmos SDK came along and built a much better modular system, modules than we were building, because you had a lot more people building it versus our small team. So the choice was like, well, we can get more current by deleting our custom modules and using Cosmos SDK's modules, and kind of developing with that upstream and helping them build a better system versus doing it ourselves. So our choice was Cosmos was very organic, for example, for a lot of as a matter of fact, and also making the right bets. We made the bet that this is an ecosystem that we want to be part of, because a lot of I saw the way this ecosystem progresses, and had a lot of parallels with Kubernetes, right? I've seen Kubernetes early ecosystem, the Docker and Kubernetes ecosystem, the kind of passion people have towards building these platforms, the kind of interaction, the kind of approach people take, the pragmatic approach, all that resonated quite a bit. And I've seen that in Cosmos, ecosystem, right? The people, and we were right. I'm glad to be right. And now you look at IBC as this real thing with osmosis and all the beautiful things built on Cosmos SDK. And I'm so glad to make that bet back then, and seeing this through, right? So I'm just and I'm way more confident now seeing osmosis and others building on Cosmos that this is going to be the future. There's no doubt. There's no way in hell a shared state system can have the same level of scalability and performance as sovereign system. And when the sovereign system can interoperate, that's the killer. And super hyper bullish like on Cosmos in general.
That's great. And I think it's definitely proven to start out right. Also, shout out to the Cosmos gang in the chat here. I think we have a lot of Cosmos believers here. And like Akash is definitely a strong part of the Cosmos ecosystem. And speaking about the modules that you choose, so you've decided to pick like a 30% inflation, and like according to like stakeholders.com, you will see like 43% or 45% or something APR currently on delegating Akash. So how do you think about that? Like it's the highest inflation rate like from many of the Cosmos ecosystem chains. How do you think about that decision today, and like what does it accomplish, and what was the objective in general to establish such a high inflation rate?
So I wrote a paper in 2019 talking about bootstrapping free markets by borrowing from the future, right? So the Akash inflation model, for those of you that don't know, is a deflationary inflationary model, right? So the fixed supply of 389 million tokens that get released over time in a decay curve, right? Where the inflation rate, the emission rate, is on a decay curve that goes to near zero in 80 years or something. The idea behind that was, well, you need to, first of all, launch a system and secure the system. How are we going to secure the system? By creating incentives for you to stake your tokens. And what's the incentive for that? Well, if you give a very attractive incentive in the beginning, like a high staking ratio, you're going to attract a lot more folks to secure your network. And we were right. And when we launched with a very high APR. I think at some point we had like close to 90% of these tokens being staked. And also another thing you can do with higher inflation is you can actually incentivize behavior that you want to see in the system, right? So first important thing from a priority standpoint was to have a very strong security model and also recruit or distribute the tokens to believers that are going to hang on for a very long time. So stakers tend to be the most powerful, um, support pillar for Akash Network now and moving forward. So this decay curve based inflation is a way to distribute tokens to early believers of the system, right? So that's how you actually filter out the strong hands versus weak hands, because the strong ones are staking, restaking, because they understand there's a fixed supply of Akash tokens, and the way to get to those tokens, the only way is to stake. And then you have the weak hands where, well, they're going to take the staking rewards and sell them in a marketplace, thinking Akash is an income generating asset. Yeah, sure, there's nothing wrong with it if that's what you want to do, but also realize that by you selling the tokens means you're getting less percentage of the network, right? So, um, so yes, it's a token distribution mechanism that incentivizes long-term thinkers and long-term believers. Because Akash right now, yes, it's about 300 million market cap. That's nothing. It's a blip, right? It's a blip in what's possible and what's coming. Yeah, you can make some money by selling Akash tokens, but the real money is, again, there's none of this is forward-looking statements. I want to make sure none of this is financial advice, but really think about in the context of things. Cloud is just the cloud business is about 700 billion dollars, right? It's going to be $1 trillion market. But beyond that, the devices and the compute market is just humongous. And if you consider it's going to be a fixed supply of tokens to serve the market, the real value will come from demand for usage of these tokens, not from staking rewards, right? But the staking rewards really incentivizes early believers, and that's how we thought about it. And we laid the foundation for a high inflationary based system, and all the projects that came after Akash, Persistence and everything else, kind of took this template into high inflation. People thought this is going to create a ruckus. No, but it got the chain to a $300 million chain. And of course, but actual incentive is going to be the deflationary properties of Akash that is created by the demand for the Akash token. And Akash Economics 2.0, which is coming, we started working on it, and it's going to make Akash token deflationary. So we are working on a more stable exchange of value, because Akash token volatility, even though there are solutions we propose how to overcome the volatility when you're paying for your hosting, people don't find it easy to do. So the easier solution is to not make people think. Right now we're making people think a lot. So that means we have to go to a more stable exchange of value, which is coming very excited. And we're going to do a lot more with Akash Economics 2.0 that are going to make Akash more deflationary while incentivizing staking. So it's going to be a fun thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think it's really like a beautiful way to look at it again, like as well, because most protocols just think about like the inflation as like how much inflation do we need to really provide like secure network and secure infrastructure. But you're more looking at like incentivizing early believers, which is kind of merging like the security of the network aspect with like some sort of like airdrop concept or something that's like established like very, very successfully in the crypto ecosystem, like to get adoption and like to reward early believers and so on. So in that sense, Akash is probably the first very well-designed stake drop of all times to distribute to the true believers. And maybe to give some sentiment, guys, in the chat, like if you're staking Akash, give us like some plus. Show like that you're staking Akash. Like, are you into it? Just let us know like the sentiment here. And then jumping into the next question, like how do you think, like what role will staking play in the Akash network, like going forward as well? So you just touched on it basically. Are you do you have any specific plans on the tokenomics? And how will like that deflationary model look like in detail? Can you share more on that already, or?
I don't want to jump the gun here, but Akash is a proof of stake chain, so staking is going to be the only way to secure the chain. I don't think we're going to proof of work, but the incentives are going to change. I mean, there's definitely the notion of the take income. That means some percentage of Akash's hosting fees are going to be incentivizing staking, right? So but right now it's not meaningful. We only have, I don't know, 1,000. It's very little, right? I mean, Akash doesn't make as much as money to make that take income meaningful. But that's going to be, but it becomes meaningful at scale. That's going to come, but we're also looking at different ways on how to capture the value indirectly versus directly because of regulatory implications, more so. So stakers are going to continue being the critical pillar for Akash, and they're always going to be, because they're believers, and because that's when things go wrong, they're the ones who are going to come to your side, right? But we are looking at making Akash token more store of value. Like we looked at what Terra has done phenomenally well with UST, where you have the burn and mint mechanism for synthetics. So Akash token, if you consider the token for the cloud, especially when we have the decentralized market open up, we're going to, and we are kind of finding it difficult to sell the concept that you got to pay using a volatile token. So I think stable token is going to be very key for adoption, right? Not only for Akash, but from the Akash's ecosystem when you have all these like third-party services. So, but the Akash token will be used either as a collateral or either as a burn mechanism. So to generate these stable assets. So USD has done a phenomenal job in proving that that's possible. So we're looking at something similar model, but again, we got to keep in the concept that we may not have the type of use cases USD supports. USD is a general stablecoin that is going to be a lot widely used than Akash's stablecoin, right? So, and how do you sort of like take that into consideration when you design these stable coins to be a very ecosystem specific stable coin and not necessarily the general world everybody uses Akash stable coin, right? So a lot of the design considerations we have to make that we're working through, and also from like a depository standpoint, yes, these backend services need some sort of like what do you call slashing conditions, right? So there's some depository requirements that tie back to the Akash token, right? So anything we do in the Akash ecosystem ties back to AKT token, even though it's a new token or some behavior we want to incentivize or something like that. As Akash ecosystem gets bigger and bigger, the utility for Akash token gets bigger. But the only way to get or like increase your Akash token or reduce your cost basis or increase your token position is through staking right now.
Yeah. So you just talked about the slashing. Is it actually like when you run a cloud provider node on Akash, do you have any deposit or anything, or like how do you prevent someone to like run corrupted software or like inject any kind of flaws into the system? Is there like a collateral, or like how is AKT kind of connected to like the cloud providers, and what's the slashing there, and how do you make sure that the system doesn't get like hijacked or anything?
So Akash relies on redundancy versus fault prevention, there's really no way to prevent faults in a generic system, right? You have to, only way to prevent fault is to have a higher abstraction. So Akash relies on more of a redundancy to prevent faults versus trying to prevent fault directly. That said, Akash has a decentralized auditing system, which essentially enables sort of like a peer-to-peer auditing mechanism based on attributes that are public. So, for example, today, if you are on Amazon or Equinix, you don't know if Amazon and Equinix are being bad actors. You just trust them because they have a brand. Now, today we trust system. This trust is critical for us to do anything today, right? And we're kind of extending that. We're not trying to challenge that model, but we're trying to minimize the trust required, but not eliminate it completely. So, and in order for that to happen, we need a decentralized sort of like identity establishment mechanism. That's where the auditing attributes comes into play. And without going into too much in detail, it is possible to know who's running your workloads, and it is possible to know the identity that's verified somehow, right, in a decentralized way. And that's how you know that's how you can minimize trust. But there's really no way to filter out bad unknown actors. There's a way to filter out bad known actors, right? So that's the approach we take.
Cool.
So, like, for example, and that makes, like, so every application is different, right? For example, if you're running a health or financial application, you have financial data, it's highly sensitive data. You may want to put that data on Equinix or someone that you trust, right? But say you're running a machine learning application, and your machine learning application just takes in number in, number out. It's a FIFO, right? You don't need to trust. You can run that on a Ukrainian data center or my fridge. You don't need to trust. And you have redundancy to check that from different sources. If a single source is corrupt, it's a corrupt source, and you throw it away. There's no risk. So depending on the application, you can have the freedom of choice as to what service to trust, right? Some applications require zero trust. Some applications need absolute trust. There's no way in hell, right? So Akash gives you the flexibility on who to trust, and that's beauty.
Cool. That's great. Like going forward, like, can you share a little bit of like the immediate roadmap for Akash? For how do the coming months look like? What can people look forward to?
Yeah, I highly recommend you go check out akash.network/roadmap. We did also on our blog, we did a quick update as to where we are with our roadmap. A big thing that's coming up in February is a testnet that'll enable persistent storage on the network in the mainnet. We have that in the testnet right now. It works really well. A big thing is persistent storage, because that'll unlock data heavy applications like full nodes, like Ethereum nodes, Solana nodes, Cosmos nodes, for example. So you'll be able to run validators and really heavy data stuff really simply on Akash. Right now, it's very limited. I think there's a limit of 1 terabyte of data that you can run. So we're really excited to power through Solana ecosystem after that happens, because right now Solana ecosystem is struggling with bootstrapping their RPC servers, bootstrapping in anything they need. They end up using like public RPC servers, and they end up crashing these RPC servers, right? So simply boot up an RPC server, and and also you'll start seeing like things where you want, and we're going to store snapshot for most Cosmos chains. So Akash will become the fastest way to deploy a Cosmos chain, sync from the snapshot that's local in your network. We're going to make this whole experience of like booting up a node, either in a heavily distributed way where you have 3 or 4 nodes in a cluster with sentries and whatnot. We'll make this whole like setting up things really quickly with storage, right? Immediately after that, we're going to have GPUs we're suspecting another 3 to 5 months for the GPUs to be ready. And the big ticket item, and we have other amazing properties, features that do log retention and IP address marketplace. IP addresses, having unique IP addresses for your services is critical, especially for Solana and whatnot. And then the big thing leading up to the end of the year is going to be the services marketplace I was talking about, the decentralized services marketplace. So we have a very aggressive and a very ambitious roadmap that we published, and we're powering through that.
That's amazing. I think there are a lot of very, very exciting stuff on your roadmap, and I can't wait for the GPU mining and for the GPU in general and for the marketplace as well. I think that's really gonna catapult Akash to a next level in terms of like really competing with like big players there.
Yep. Yeah, very excited about that too.
So like, how can people, like anyone like in the chat here, like people in general, how can the community support Akash and get involved?
Great. So first we're hiring akash.network/careers. We have 5 or 6 jobs rec open. We're looking for amazing engineers, developers, marketers, if you know anybody. So if you want to get involved, please apply there or talk to me. Second is spread the word in terms of what you can do right now. So, and let's be honest with it. I don't want reply boys. I don't want you to be like, some exchange is having some trouble. Hey, Akash can fix it. No, you can't really. We're not there yet. But genuinely be curious. Like, the most important things we need right now is full end-to-end decentralization, right? Like, a lot of times you have DEXs, like a lot of Uniswap labs, for example, controls uniswap.org. They should not do that. They should have a handshake domain name called Uniswap that talks on a Akash server, that loads from a snapshot living on Arweave or Saya, right? The entire thing should be decentralized instead of uniswap.org running behind Cloudflare or running behind, which is running on Amazon, which is running, fully centralized way, right? So I think just bring, and there exchanges, DeFi products like Osmosis that runs completely, at least the API servers, and now they're bringing the front end to Akash. You have things like Rango Exchange, which is fully decentralized, right? So Akash is great for DAOs. So if you have a DAO, and if you're part of a DAO, highly encourage you putting a proposal to bring that DAO's website or any data service that DAO uses onto Akash, because you don't have a keyman risk, right? A DAO today, if they want to deploy on Amazon, you have to elect a member from your DAO that'll go and has all the keys and has all the power. With Akash, anyone that controls the key controls the workload, right? So Akash is great for DAOs. Second thing Akash is really good for is mining, proof of work mining per se, not necessarily proof of stake. Proof of work, because the cost is about one fifth of what you can pay right now on Akash. There is a website called Akash Analytics. Highly encourage you to check it out. If someone could post a link there, it'll be great. Akash Analytics has a price comparison chart on top, and it'll show you Akash is like 80 to 70% cheaper than Amazon. Again, cheap, how does that mean? What does it mean? Akash is not cheap for managed services because Akash doesn't have managed services, but just cloud compute per CPU per memory unit is cheaper. So it's great for mining. If you're running any cloud mining shop or any cloud mining operation, PKT ecosystem leverages Akash quite a bit. I'd love to see more mining use case, and I think we're going to, after we have storage enabled, we're going to enable a lot of, like, mining requires big storage, or not required. Some of the mining protocols, some of the proof of work protocols do have big snapshots. I think with persistent storage, you're going to have a lot of those use cases. But right now, you can do a lot of simple, CPU mining, bandwidth mining, and all kinds of cool things on Akash. We do have a lot of providers. We're not. I think we're oversubscribed. Not, providers. We have a huge list, a pipeline that we're slowly unlocking. There tends to be a lot more supply than demand, as we predicted. So that seems to be true. So really, help we need is onboarding DAOs and onboarding DeFi applications, onboarding miners. That's the biggest value you can provide. And of course, if you're willing to, if you want to jump or work for Akash, we're looking for people as well.
That's awesome. Very, very actionable advice, I think. I saw Aldin in the chat just staked another 600 AKT. Next step, convince your local DAO to deploy on Akash, I would say.
Ask your DAO when Akash over Amazon.
Right. Cool. So that's it for like most of the long form questions, and let's jump into like some of the community questions. Like we have the giveaway with like total $5,000 worth of AKT, which is super exciting. Biggest giveaway we've ever done in Staking Mondays. And we pick 5 winners now. Each we get $1,000 of AKT tokens, and we ask the question to you. And first winner is Live and Let Die. Congrats to you. The question is, how do you plan to attract new dApps to build on Akash? And are universities an option as well?
How do you plan to attract? By a few things. Right now, Akash, so when a dApp, so dApp has 2 main components. It has, I would say, the component, the state, which is usually on Ethereum or Solana or Cosmos, it's fully decentralized. Whereas the runtime, when it comes to user interaction, the websites, the API servers, or the RPC servers that talk to the blockchain, that seem to be heavily centralized, right? The first and obvious thing we need to do is increase education. Yes, you can take your RPC server and your front end and move that to Akash and have it fully decentralized like Osmosis or like Rango, right? Just awareness of for a DAO, I think increasing that will be great. And second thing is we got to make it simple. You got to make it super simple. Right now, they use something called Netlify or Vercel, which is very simple to use, in all honesty, right? So, but using Akash, it's not that simple. And we're working on a new CLI. We're working on amazing simple features that will make it super simple, a lot simpler than using Vercel or Netlify. So, and third thing we need to work on is on ramping, right? Like, so right now it's very hard to get Akash tokens to use Akash versus going to a centralized system where you put your credit card, right? And there are solutions we're working through to make that on ramp much simpler. So one of the features we enable at Akash is decoupling payment from operations. So you can, we're working on a system where users can pay using credit cards, that, and to some provider they'll purchase AKT tokens using the credit card and not transfer the AKT tokens, but still power the account that uses the Akash, that can deploy on Akash and paid through a different entity. So as long as you don't transfer tokens to the user, it's legal. So we're working on a way that'll enable us to essentially spin up UIs that the user doesn't have to touch AKT, it just happens invisibly on the back end. So 3 things we need. We need, number 1, awareness, number 2, simplicity, and number 3, easy access in order for us to attract more dApps. And we're working through that aggressively.
All right. And so you actually, like in general, like to attract more dApps, I think the question was more like to attract more developers. But I think this was very interesting anyway.
Right. I mean, same thing, right? Like make it simple, easy.
It's basically the same thing, I think. So let's move on. Second winner of today, and a great question as well, is from Aerosol. So congratulations to you, $1,000 worth of AKT. Does Akash's reliance on unused cloud capacity in centralized data centers compromise its vision of a decentralized cloud computing service? And how does the Akash Super Mini factor into this?
Not really, because most compute right now, unused compute, is on big data centers. There are about 8.2 million data centers in the world that have 85% or so unused compute. It's the sample is big enough that it doesn't compromise the decentralized nature of Akash. And Super Mini, so Super Mini, some background. The vision of Super Mini was to get to decentralization way quickly than what's possible right now. So when we designed Super Mini, we wanted to put GPUs, but we realized having GPUs is way harder than on Kubernetes than it seemed to be, right? So we have to push away GPU. I mean, we didn't cancel Super Mini. We're pushing it away for a future date when we'll have GPUs and when we can attract compute that can run on a GPU-based system, right? So our reliance on data centers does not compromise, but it bootstraps supply so that we can actually go build meaningful networks, a meaningful network that'll eventually reduce the reliance on a big data center to a point. It can be a Super Mini, or it can be a phone, or it can be a fridge, or it can be a car. It doesn't really matter. But we're not there yet in terms of like attractiveness from a user standpoint, and that'll only happen if we have the big data center supporting us in the stages. But the vision is always way more decentralized than big data centers.
Cool, great. Leads us to the third question and third winner, Marty OG. Congratulations to you, man. $1,000 worth of AKT. So his question is, collaboration is very important today, and Akash recently partnered with Polygon. What partnerships is Akash planning, or with which projects would you like to partner in the future? So I guess we already talked about like storage projects and so on. Like, which partnerships are important for you guys?
So for us as the ecosystem, right? So like Polygon and Solana, phenomenal ecosystems. They have amazing dApps in these ecosystems. They all should use Akash, right? And a lot of this year is going to be working on, and full honesty, we have announced partnerships. We did marketing into this ecosystem, but we haven't really put a lot of work in bringing in a lot of Solana apps yet on Akash. In full transparency. And why? Because, well, we could solve one problem of decentralization, but we can't really solve the problem of capabilities, right? For example, for a Solana application, a meaningful Solana application run on Akash, you need RPC servers that require a lot of data. Akash cannot support persistence data, right? Not yet. It'll support next month onwards in mainnet. So any effort we have in Solana ecosystem is going to be subpar with centralized cloud. And with Polygon, same thing. Like, well, if you go to a Polygon dApp and be like, hey, move to Akash, because the value is decentralization, people are like, yeah, it's cool, but we're busy building apps, and we have users, we got to update these things. How easy it is to deploy on Akash? It's not, right? Well, how can we get there, right? So a lot of times our adoption is challenged, not because of our ability to build partnerships. That's easy, right? Because leaders of Solana or leaders of Polygon, all of them align in the same ethos that we build Akash on, but not necessarily the people in the ecosystem, because for them it's about time, it's about cost. I mean, not time, cost in the sense of time, the cost of time, right? Not the actual deployment cost. For them, it's about like, hey, how easy it is to use Akash versus Netlify. Now it's not. So the way we get to these ecosystems and grow our adoption is simplifying how you can use Akash, and that's why a lot of work into new command line is going, and new user interface that we're developing, and a lot of these amazing critical features that enable us to reestablish our dominance in these ecosystems, right? So, new partnerships, we're always looking for things that enhance Akash user, like storage, like load balancers, like databases, right? So, or even use cases that extend Akash to next level, like self-driving vehicles or crazy ideas like that. But end of the day, whatever ecosystem, whatever partnership we choose, we have to establish dominance. So we have enough partnerships, to be honest with you, that we need to focus on internally. We have Cosmos, we have Solana, and we have Polygon and Helium, all these amazing partnerships that we are very close with. We haven't honestly done enough work to leverage these relationships, and we're going to be focused on that quite a bit. And I don't want to be in a position of just announcing shell partnerships for the sake of it. A lot of people in crypto do that. I don't want to be one of those projects. So meaningful stuff is what we're focused on. That makes sense.
Makes a ton of sense, I think. And leading us to the fourth community question, winner of that and winning question is from Crypto3Mac. Congratulations to you. Do you have any advice for freshly graduated software engineers on how to build their career in distributed systems and cloud computing?
So repeat the question. How do you build distributed systems?
No, like, do you have any advice for freshly graduated software engineers on like how to build their career, how to start the career in distributed systems and cloud computing? How do they start their career? How do they become successful as like, yeah, newly graduated?
Oh wow. Well, don't take the easy way. Try to learn things the hard way, I think. Because when you try to learn things the hard way, you understand more deeply from a first principle standpoint versus taking things for granted. So a lot of times we go and deploy things on the cloud, we assume, and cloud makes everything so simple, and we don't understand the fundamentals, the foundation. We build our foundations from that abstraction, which tends to lead you in the way that they want you to go, right? So don't build on Amazon, don't build on Google. Try to run your own data center or try to run a server yourself, because the knowledge that you gain from doing so is going to challenge your peers and increase, and of course it's higher risk, right? But with higher risk comes higher reward. Especially, I think, as a fresh graduate, you have to optimize for working in jobs where you're at least 50% likely to fail versus succeed, because you have nothing to lose. But with that high risk comes high reward, high growth. Optimize for growth is what I would advise.
I think it's a great advice, especially people that are young and can take the risk without like kids and family want to take the risk and really go and learn it the hard way.
Absolutely. I mean, learn it the hard way, right? Higher risk, higher growth. Because if you take the easy route and like everyone else, you're not going to compete with them, right? Like, sure, you might have a cushion job and high pay, but if you're used to a comfortable job at early days in your career, that's going to be detrimental. I think try to optimize for a startup, because startups, you have higher risk of failure, and usually in startups you're asked to do things that you don't know how to 90% of the time. High failure rate, and that's what leads to high success.
Yeah. And I mean, there's not really like any way to lose, because even if you lose, you still learn a lot of stuff, and you learned like first principles, which is very valuable, I think. Anyway, so let's jump right into like the first and last winning question from Chris Hofmann. Congratulations to you, Chris. $1,000 worth of AKT. And the question is, right now, you are able to undercut cloud prices by using oversupply data centers compute. But as Akash grows, you will need significantly more supply. How do you remain cheaper in the long run?
Very good question. I don't think cost is going to be a core. Lower cost is going to be a core trigger for future. I'm talking about Akash 10 years, right? There's a lot of supply right now that lower cost, Akash would be the lowest cost for a very long time. But in a scenario where you have all the servers on Akash, for example, all the world servers, the cost is not going to be the critical differentiator. In a sense, lower cost, but right cost, right? The right price is what Akash is going for, not necessarily the low cost, right? So by opening up the competition for letting different providers compete on the price gives you the best optimal price. That's our thesis, right? Now we think current cloud is overpriced, And we think the real price is much cheaper when we take the excess compute. But on the long run, it's going to be the capabilities that's going to differentiate Akash, not cost. Well, because everybody will agree this is the right price, right? And I think all the providers will reduce their cost. They have to. Amazon has 60% margins. That's crazy, Like if you look at Snowflake is a public company. 50% of their profits go to Amazon. That's crazy. And where is that money going to Jeff Bezos' pockets, right? Like it's nuts right now. So that has to be fixed, no matter what. And once that's fixed, I think it's going to be capabilities that's going to make the differentiator.
Awesome, well said. So let's make decentralized clouds a reality. And I think there's nothing better there than Akash, which also has very, very attractive tokenomics. You can stake it. Make sure to check it out on Staking Awards as well on the website stakingawards.com/earn/Akash to understand like how you can start staking your AKT tokens and how you can participate in general. And Greg, I think it was a very, very insightful conversation. Everyone can be very grateful to hear you talking today. It was very great from my side, and I think it was very great from all the people listening here. Thanks to everyone in the audience as well. Thanks, Greg. Do you have anything to say from your side? Maybe like how can people follow you in general? How can they stay in touch? Maybe give another shout out to like get people to apply, your hiring, and so on.
So best way to reach out to me is Twitter. I'm the most active network. Twitter.com, Greg Osuri is my handle. Our biggest need right now is people. We're looking for amazing people, engineers, designers, back-end, front-end, all kinds of people. So akash.network/careers is the page to go. Highly recommend. And if you want to really know what's happening, check out our roadmap and our blog, akash.network/blog, akash.network/roadmap. You'll have an idea as to what we're building. I think if you show people the roadmap, people get really excited. And the fact we also made incredible progress on the roadmap, we'll be updating as to how to track each feature very soon. Today I'll update it after this call. So you'll have an idea as to you can track where we are with each features. So Twitter, reach out to me, and if you're a marketer, by the way, reach out to me because we're starting a DAO, a marketing DAO, and in the interest of decentralization, I haven't really talked about it. We are actually expanding our reach in terms of how we hire people to a DAO system, because I believe DAOs are the future of work. So we are putting together a support DAO and a marketing DAO, marketing/community DAO. So if you're interested in participating, please reach out to me. And it's going to be a great year for Akash. I think it's a great time to get involved. Sure, staking Akash token is great, but I think just participating in the future of the cloud, I think is very, very exciting. So yeah, looking forward to catching up with you after this call.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. And to all the winners, let me just repeat: Live, Let and Die, Aerosol, Marty OG, CryptoStreamhack, and Chris Hoffman. Make sure to send us a DM on Twitter and drop us a message, and like your official Twitter handle. We'll follow up for the next steps here. And guys, make sure to check out the previous episodes of Staking Mondays as well. Stay tuned for the next ones. We have great people. We have had great people on the show, and we will have even more greater people on the show as well. We did have Greg Osuri, which was one of the best episodes, I think. Guys, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube, follow us on Twitter, stay up to date, bookmark stakingawards.com, check out akash.network, check out the roadmap, get involved, convince your DAO to switch to Akash, and as always, guys, happy staking.
Thank you, Marco.
Thanks.